Everyone. The team at the Young Leaders Policy Discourse Forum extends a warm welcome to all our attendees for today's session. Young Leaders Policy Discourse Forum is the first ever policy discussion and debates forum of Kirurimal College, University of Delhi. It is a solution oriented knowledge platform to bridge the gap between public policy and public opinion. By bridging the gap between students and policymakers, we seek to eliminate misinformation in the domain of public policy and educate the youth about the process of policy formulation. At YLPDF, we intend to channelize the energy of young adults into research, creative and intellectual dialogues, and policy development in public and private sectors at the local, national, and international level. The ambit of the forum extends to, but is not limited to, policy making in multifarious domains such as politics and public policy, environmental law and governance, international relations and security, healthcare and education, infrastructure and technology, poverty and welfare, etc. At YLPDF, we aim to transcend the boundaries and limitations of a conventional college society and offer a holistic experience to its members and audience by the means of live discussions, intriguing debates, in house mentorships, conclaves, and research writing. We would now like to show a short video to give you all a further insight into the forum and introduce you to the torchbearers of the same.
I hope the screen is visible.
Yeah, it's visible.
Yes, it is.
It so happens that within the course curriculum, which is very structured for political science and public administration or policy sciences, we don't get that kind of a stretch of time to dig deeper into the nuances of policy sciences. Public policy, after all, is at the heart of political science and has been conceptualized in a variety of ways. In the present type of times of hyperconnectivity, the communication and technological changes which are happening pose a new set of challenges on the policy makers, on the structures and on the processes through which policy is made. So it makes it all the more imperative and crucial to evolve a better informed, responsive, participative policy designs, policy tools, information and mechanism.
The youth possess abundance of energy and dynamism. Their participation in the public policy domain can be characterized as an action-oriented process with their involvement in institutions, innovative practices, and decision-making capabilities. This would also help or assist our policy makers to improvise their policy design or their program design, their implementation mechanisms through the incorporation of the valuable and insightful ideas received from the youth.
Policy analysis, it talks about cause and explanations. So as a student of political science and public policy, what can we do? We can try to understand for the purpose it has been designed, how long it has served the reality in the terms of public domain. We should be in a position to measure the so-called the outcome in the terms of input and the so-called output. And we as a student, we should not be blindly following the things which are being talked in the so-called the social media, rather than we shall apply our minds and understand the concept from our own analysis. Public policy in India teaches you to become critically aware about the so-called the both sides of its executions. We know that the policies are being done through a legal rational authority. There is a legislative, there is executive. But then again, it is also important to understand that these policies are made for the people, and people itself is a complex reality, and not all the demands of people can be fulfilled. But then those demands which are needed to be fulfilled, that has to be covered through the policy formulations and executions.
We need to understand how these policies are being formulated, because these policies are for us. We are its impact bearers.
To analyze and critically evaluate the policies that govern us today and that will govern us in future.
We need to trust young people as much as we do adults because the future is as much ours as is theirs.
Bridge the gap between the students and policymakers.
Between public policy and public opinion,
and between policy formulation and administration
to facilitate a dialogue between youth and policymakers.
To promote a more robust public discourse.
To channelize the energy of the young adults into research and policy development in the public and the private sector.
And to eliminate misinformation in this domain through well-researched analysis of national and global policies.
Through insightful webinars and the live discussions with policymakers and advocates.
through intriguing in-house and external debate.
Through in-house mentorship and training workshops.
Through policy brief, conclaves, case study competitions, research writing, and much more.
Particularly congratulate the young leaders from the political science department who actually picked up this idea and worked hard to create this forum. And I have been observing it. It's truly a critical mass that you've created within the Department of Political Science, who are engaging in some serious, sensible discussions and debates about the policies both within the national terrain and at the international and global level.
That was indeed a beautiful reflection of the motive and principles that Wild PDF upholds.
On this note, we invite our respected principal, ma'am, Professor Vibha Singh Chauhan. Ma'am, are you there?
I believe she just left the meeting.
Okay. So we'll move forward.
Would you like to call her and confirm whether she...
I think to wait for a moment. She may be having a connectivity issue. So just hold on for 1 or 2 minutes.
Sure, ma'am.
Perhaps someone could give her a call in case she hasn't realized she dropped out of the meeting.
I will. I'm just calling her. I'm sorry, she's not picking up the call. So somebody can be, watching out if as soon as she joins. If it's during my address, you can tell me to stop and I can give the platform to her. Is that fine?
Yes, ma'am, sure.
So we go ahead, and then as soon as she joins, I'll stop, and we can give the platform to her.
Sure, ma'am.
Okay. So we're going ahead so that we don't lose out of the time. Good afternoon, everybody, and very, very welcome to the Young Leader Policy Discourse Forum. I'm very delighted to have among us Professor Madhulika Banerjee, who is a faculty at the Department of Political Science, University of Delhi, and two of our alumni who are pursuing very interesting work in the domain of public policy. We have Pankuri Jain, who's doing post-graduation in the policy design management Indian School of Public Policy in New Delhi. And we also have Vardhan Shikhar, who will be joining us in maybe a few minutes from now. And since the topic of today's webinar is youth engagement in public policy, I think the panel just sets the stage for this perfect discussion to happen. The genesis of this Young Leaders Policy Discourse Forum was rooted to this very active debates which I witnessed on WhatsApp students group during the pandemic. And during one of my lecture, I suggested, why not just tap into this keenness and potential, keenness and also potential, kind of strength and capabilities which young students were reflecting upon, and also to steer them in some meaningful, data-based, well-researched discussion rather than having this kind of an amateurish exchanges based on randomly picked online social media platforms. So youth participation, I personally believe in policy-making process, is a very action-oriented process involving young people, particularly in the educational institutions, who can be taught to decode the policies that affect our lives and organize around the issues of their choices. And we can also bring up this or create this kind of intergenerational partnerships between the youths and the adults in the policy domain. Youth participation in policy also benefits young people's skill development, their self-perception as a citizen, as well as policy design and implementation. It fosters this very transferable non-cognitive skills and competencies. Connecting the peers through active engagement on policies allows young people to build the social capital. Youth feel more engaged when their views are put on the policy agenda. It creates this very positive sense of self-awareness and identity, which increases the resilience in the democratic process and also well-being of the community and citizens per se. Through participation, youth learn to process the information, build decision-making ability. It allows them to understand better how the government bodies actually work and increase the public transparency and also accountability. An improved understanding of political and administrative machinery helps to create this trust and faith in the public authorities. It improves the program design implementation. So as a coordinator, I personally have a lot of faith and trust that this forum, which is very unique because this is the first time that the policy forum has been created in Karodimal College, I think it's going to emerge as a very active and vibrant platform for rational and logical debates to pan out over the course of the years. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you for sharing such kind words, ma'am. Moving ahead, today's event is a webinar on the theme Significance of Youth Engagement in Public Policy. This webinar will be an effort to elucidate the role of young minds in contributing towards policy design, agenda setting, policy formulation, and implementation. This webinar brought to you by ILPDF is strictly for educational and awareness purposes. It is academic in nature. The views and opinions expressed are neither in coincidence with YLPDF nor are they endorsed by the same. They're solely the beliefs of the speakers.
Today we have a diverse panel of guest speakers with us. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all our panelists for today. Our first panelist is Professor Madhulika Banerjee. She is a professor of political science at University of Delhi and has taught mainstream political science since 1985 and researched on the broad theme of politics of knowledge and technology at the same time. One of her areas of great interest in the life of the university always has been the trajectory that young people can follow to fulfill their own ambitions in the greater common good. She now hopes to help build bridges between them and the needs of the society as one of the aims of the university. We are delighted to have you on board with us, ma'am. You can take the discussion forward.
Thank you so much, Janani, and thank you, Divyanshi, um, for inviting me to this forum. Thank you, Dr. Oberoi, for setting up this very interesting platform and encouraging students to explore unknown territory here. But while it may be unknown, it certainly is something that is full of possibilities. And it's only a teacher who can actually acquaint students with a set of possibilities and encourage them to take them up, even if they feel that it's beyond their ken or it's beyond their capacities. And I therefore really appreciate that Dr. Oberoi takes this particular aspect of her responsibility and her role as a teacher so seriously, because this is very much required. And most people in most professions actually define their work within a certain set, within certain set parameters, and don't really concern themselves with going beyond that. I've always believed that teaching can't be done like that. One always has to push the boundaries. And if only we push the boundaries, then students will feel encouraged to push the boundaries. I think that that's a very good start. And that's where interesting ideas like this start. So my warm congratulations to you, Dr. Oberoi, on taking this up. I'm very pleased that the idea has been taken up by the students, because you can push, but you can't, you can take the horse to the water, you can't make them drink. So if you have actually believed that you can probably do it, take it forward, that's kudos to you. And I really hope that you're not deterred by this, virtual interaction and so on. And now that things are opening up a little bit, even if the university space is not, I hope that you feel able to, join and initiatives of different kinds, and participate in a much larger, sort of ambition of actually being involved in public policy. That's a wonderful initiative, and I'm really pleased to be part of this. My understanding has been forever, since I've been a student myself and all these years that I've been a teacher, that nothing can replace self-belief. If you think you can do it, you can. And there will always be naysayers. There'll always be people who will say, अरे अकेले क्या कर लोगे, इतने सारे लोग दूसरा काम कर रहे हैं, आप क्या करोगे? और उस सब में अगर आप सोचते हैं कि नहीं, मैंने सोचा है ये ज़रूरी है, या ये मज़ेदार काम है, या ये समाज के लिए ज़रूरी है, मेरे लिए ज़रूरी है, तो हम करने लगते हैं. And often we find that when we take the initiative and take the plunge into doing something, you find you're not actually alone. There are many people who think like you. And everybody begins by thinking that they are alone, because that's what society always says. Everybody around us, parents, friends, neighbors, relatives of all descriptions, अरे क्या समझ रहे हो, अपने आप को क्या समझते हो, कुछ भी कर लोगे, ऐसे नहीं होता, पैसे लगते हैं, लोग लगते हैं, अरे बड़ी हस्तियां होती हैं, वो तुम्हें खत्म कर देंगी, इत्यादि इत्यादि, बहुत कुछ होता है. But no change ever comes from fear. It only comes with courage. It only comes with self-belief. So do tell yourselves, give yourselves a pat on the back. If I was there physically with you, I would have patted all of you on the back physically to say, well done for starting with this self-belief. Very important. And don't let up. Those of you who spoke, and in the video as well, I'm so glad that you made that video, which expressed why all of you were interested. That's always the best point to start. You can always get some old fuddy-duddy to come and give you a lecture. वो हम लोगों ने अब इसका प्रोफेशन बना लिया है, कहीं पे खड़ा कर दोगे तो कुछ तो बोल ही देंगे हम लोग, है ना? लेकिन आप क्या सोचते हैं और आप क्या कहना चाहते हैं, आपके मन में क्या है, आप क्या करना चाहते हैं? This is something that is very valuable. And I'm glad you began with that. Remember that that is going to be your reference point. Even if you don't remember anything I say, it doesn't matter. If you remember what you believe, that is very important. Okay, so having expressed my appreciation, let me begin to share with you what I have thought. See, I must tell you that I don't really feel that I have much competence to speak here. Because as a young person, I gave myself the agenda that I would try to teach and teach well. I would try to teach in an engaged manner. I gave myself a very limited agenda. What my teachers taught me, and some wonderful teachers encouraged me, was to listen to a large number of people in order to be able to teach. I was taught that learning does not come only from books. It comes from as many sources as you make them. And if you open your mind and your heart, you will learn so much more. You listen, open your ears, listen. What happens, very often in academics and with the kind of education that we receive, this education actually makes us so self-assured at one level that we've learned everything because we have acquired a BA degree or an MA degree. If you have a PhD or the cat's whiskers, right? If you've published a few things, oh my God, you can't be touched with a barge pole. The difficulty is that this is learning, there's no question. It's very valuable learning, but it's important to understand the limits of that learning. And it's important, therefore, to see, okay, if there are limits to this learning, can we open up the borders a bit and learn from other sources? So one of the things that I learned to do was to listen to people who walked on the ground, who did not bother about a middle-class existence like we had, worked with policy issues on the ground, worked with the state on the ground. You and I engage with the state and policy in our academic confines, right? In the classroom, reading, writing, examinations, research, all of that. But then there are people on an everyday basis who engage with the state, who engage with policy, and they have very valuable insights. So one of the things that I did was to listen to them. And I can tell you that that fascination has remained with me. So in that sense, the only qualification I have to speak here is to share with you what I've learned from them. I've not done what you're trying to do. I have not been brave enough to actually think that I can intervene in policy at your age. That's wonderful. So I feel a bit of an interloper. Then I thought to myself, why has Rupinder asked me to come and speak here? Kuch aata hoga shayad, tabhi bola hoga, nahi. So, okay, I racked my brains. So what is it that I have to share? These kids who are so enthusiastic and they are so full of ideas, clearly. And then I thought to myself that, okay, let me share what I have learned from others. all of you used different kinds of words. I was noting them down. People talk about the public, of course. When we talk about public policy, we are talking about a certain public for whom policy is being made. Someone referred to the people. Of course, we are political scientists, and political scientists functioning in a democracy. So, of course, we would think of people, right? Someone said it is about policy for us and our future, right? So, we are talking about all of us and you particularly, because you feel that whatever is being done today is something that is going to govern your tomorrows. And that's a very good reason why you should be engaged in that. And then, of course, someone mentioned discourse, and I thought, now this is something that we need to talk about. What is this discourse? A word that we use a lot these days, and political scientists are very fond of this word. So we need to unpack it a little bit. So let me try and just refer to the kind of things that you've been talking about and what little I understand of policy. And let's see if we can have a conversation going. When you're studying public policy courses, Dr. Oberoi teaches them. I do too. One very important aspect of policy that we need to remember is that it is part of a larger frame of politics. Public administration in many universities is taught outside of political science. It is taught as an independent discipline. In Delhi University, we always asserted that it is part and parcel of the study of politics. So it's always been a part of the discipline of political science, the faculty of political science. Why is that? Because we need to remember that while rules and regulations, etc., need to be quite objective and so on, ultimately, people who make the rules, who they have in mind when they make the rules, the manner in which they frame the rules, these are all governed by the hierarchies of power in which they are located. So students of politics must remember that policy is political. That is why, for you to take this project that we are going to try and intervene in policy is a very exciting prospect. You are acknowledging that young people who nobody gives a jot about, nobody takes seriously, and in our deeply, it's a reverse kind of ageist society, in which we think that the older you get, the more gray hairs you have, the more eligible you are to make decisions for everybody else. It starts from the family and goes all the way up to, offices of government. So young people are not taken seriously in this society at all. And you are saying that we don't believe in this hierarchy. You are saying that we are thinking people who have dreams, who have ideas, who have energy, and who have capability. So we feel that we can actually influence policy, help in formulation, help in implementation. Please take us seriously. You are inverting the power structure. You're challenging the power structure. And by just the act of creating this forum and saying that you want to be taken seriously, you've started the process of a political approach to policy. So recognize it, own it. I hope that as students of politics, you don't continue to hold a negative notion of politics that our society is so happy to always talk about. अरे पॉलिटिशियन ऐसे करते हैं, गंदे होते हैं, लड़ते हैं, ये करते हैं, जैसे हम लोग नहीं करते. People talk about politicians as if they're a breed that has come from Mars. They are from our society. They reflect what we do. They do what we do. So we have to start owning the process of politics. second very, very important thing, when we say that public policy needs to be made and policy is for people, we need to remember that if we are functioning in a democracy, then everything that is democratic should also be of and by the people. Hmm. Policy is always for people. So, which people make for which people? This is a deeply political matter as well. Why? Because there is a hierarchy here as well. Some people think that they know better than other people. And they are going to decide what is going to be good for the others. Because they know better than the others what is good for them. Okay, so this is being said in very, very simplistic terms. Let me talk a little bit more in the language of political science. That those who create policy have access to a certain kind of education, a certain set of knowledge, and a certain kind of understanding, which makes them believe that their knowledge, their understanding is better. They have a better vision of where society should be headed. They have a better vision of what path should be treaded in order to get to that position. And therefore, they will make the decisions for everybody else as to how all of this is going to happen. To my mind, as a political scientist, this is a deeply undemocratic activity. It is deeply undemocratic to think that some of us who are privileged to have a certain kind of education, and I hope that the study of politics that you've been privileged to have has taught you that you are privileged, very privileged, to have this education. And privilege is not an achievement, it's an accident of birth. It's ascriptive. So you have no credit for this privilege. You were born into it. I was born into it. After that, after we have been born into privilege, got all the benefits of that privilege, then we want to exercise that privilege over others and say, you are poor, you have no idea, you haven't got any education, बुद्धू हो तुम, कुछ नहीं पता आपको कि आपको क्या चाहिए. And this is, to my mind, deeply problematic. Let me explain why. See, when we, I don't have, 2 hours like I usually do in my lecture, so I will be brief. What we think is the good life for which all of us are headed is something that was defined only in the last 150 years or so. What is it to do good, to be well, to have a decent life? What is it to develop is an idea that was only developed in the last 150 years or so. And it has come together with deploying a certain set of technologies, a certain kind of innovations, which all of which feed into creating that kind of universe, a certain kind of development. And all of public policy is geared towards an achievement of those dimensions of development. What is this development that we are so anxious for everybody to have? That everybody should lead a somewhat decent life where they are able to have 3 square meals a day. They're able to live in a decent, comfortable home. They are able to practice whatever work they want to do. That they have some kind of human dignity. Now, to equate this fundamental set of achievements, aspirations, to a certain model of how to develop, this is a fallacy. And so all public policy that presumes that we have to get to this aspiration through this path is a fallacy. If policy only thinks that this is the path that has to be followed, because we have to reach to that point, and reaching to that point, there is only this path available. It's fallacious, because when you start exploring, there are so many other ways of doing things. And those other ways we already know, we can discover. If you've discovered this development path, we can also discover other development paths. No, I should correct myself. Many other development paths have been discovered by different people. Those who make policy don't bother to look out for them, don't bother to try and access them. And so the whole process of public policy making, formulating, evaluating, implementation, all of it follows a certain track. And that track is only about fulfilling this kind of particular kind of development agenda. And what we as young people can do, and when I'm saying we as young people, I'm simply for the moment, don't think that I wish to be as young as you. I can't if I try. But my children are as old as you are. But what we need to do is to begin to see that there are other ways of doing, of creating policy, of reaching to that aspiration. We don't need to take it completely for granted, that this is the only way, and we have to frame all policy in that. That's one very important point that I wanted to share with all of you. The second point that I want to share is that this education comes also from the first point that I was saying, this education that we are all privileged to have, and we have all exercised, and we've all, sort of taken so much pride in. Remember that it teaches you a few things. It doesn't teach you many other things. I told you that, I made it a habit to listen. And I have learned so much from people who don't share my education, who come from very different backgrounds, who don't share my privileges, but who have so many different ways of looking at the world, so many ways of actually, creating very beautiful things, living a very beautiful life, which is very unlike the life that I am familiar with. I would encourage you all to first ask people, to look for people who think differently, who have actually operationalized a whole series of other ideas, which are not always commonly known, and which certainly those who make policy never find out. And now in this day of information, it's so much more accessible. Since all of us are now accustomed to looking for information all the time on the web, please go to the web. I'm sure many of you must probably know of these wonderful websites that document the work that people do in this country. So I don't know how many of you know the betterindia.com, yourstory.com, Humans of Bombay, all kinds of things. So what I have learned is that there are so many kinds of knowledges that give us a very different set of outcomes, different kinds of products, different lives, different kinds of ways in which we deal with nature. In the beginning, Dr. Oberoi and I were discussing how uncertain life is. And this whole question of the climate crisis, which is now really looming ahead, all these unseasonal rains. Look at what is happening in Chennai. It is raining non-stop. People don't have power. There's so much difficulty. We know that rising sea levels are a reality. We know that cities near the seas can, begin to go underwater. And for your generation particularly, it must be a frightening prospect. And it's not unusual, therefore, that your generation also suffers so much from so many issues, because the anxiety of this kind of a future must be awful. But that is also the reason why you need to look in different directions. Don't allow this anxiety to then bulldoze you into this beaten track. This is the beaten track that has created the climate crisis. Don't forget. And if you want to actually fight the climate crisis, you don't have to do big things. You have to start with small things. You have to start by recovering water bodies, local water bodies. You have to start by making sure waste is decomposed in your area. It does not go to a landfill. You can start by making sure that there is a local unit that recycles plastic and paper. You can do it. Our students in Delhi University are extremely energetic and innovative. I know that. You can do it. If you decide to take up the hundreds of innovations that people are making on the ground without any kind, all our IITs and ICERs are not engaged in this kind of work, let's say. It's not them, it's people on the ground who have a capacity to actually innovate, who are innovating these things. So these are not very difficult, unachievable things. There are all these people in this country who are doing. They are the ones who are showing you alternative policies as that they can be worked on the ground. They are there. The evidence is there. The possibilities are spelt out by them. And I think that it's very important to start looking towards them and to see what one can learn for policy for the future from them. Way too much time has been spent on formal policy making, on formal structures, which have failed us again and again and again. Too many. I think that as students of politics, believe in people. It's very important for us. The problem is, as soon as we get an education, we think that people are useless. They have to be driven. भेड़ियों की तरह. अरे वो भेड़ नहीं भाई. They are people with minds and they are people with hearts. They are people with great intelligence. The difficulty is the challenge for us young people, for you young people particularly, is to get rid of this vanity of this education. Use your education. I'm not saying that it's useless. It's useful in many ways. But the overwhelming problem it gives you is a vanity and self-belief in which there is no room for learning from someone who does not seem to be as educated as you. You are all sitting quietly and listening to a lecture by me. बकवास ही मैं बोलती, फिर भी आप सुनते. क्या कि प्रोफेसर है, कुछ तो बोलेंगे काम का चीज. लेकिन कोई जमीन पे आदमी आपको मिले और उनसे आप पूछिए कि ये हमारे जो how many of you know the word Johar? Many of you must be North Indians. Do you know this word, Johar? Bawri? Does anyone know this? Yes, Aditya? You raised your hand. Can you tell me what a Johar is or a Bawri, if you know either of the two? Ji.
Ma'am, I just want to confirm, are you asking about Johari?
Not Johari. I'm saying Johar.
Sorry, ma'am, I don't know about that.
No, Bawri.
Ma'am, are these water resources?
Are you asking me or are you telling me? Tell me. You think that they are water resources? Where are you from, Aryan?
Ma'am, I'm from Rajasthan.
Where in Rajasthan are you from?
Bharatpur.
Bharat. तो आपके एरिया के आसपास गांव में आपने जौहर देखा होगा?
Yeah, ma'am.
You're not sure whether they're called Johar or not.
Ma'am, people in my locality used to say that these are Johar or Babri, and in the village area, these type of water resources can be seen.
All villages will have at least one Johar. Or
Yeah,
one.
yeah, ma'am.
Why? Because where there is so little water, every drop of water has to be saved. So this fashionable concept of rainwater harvesting has actually been practiced by people for a very long time. Whether or not they were in our Shastras is not important. No, it's not great Indian culture in the Shastras. It is great Indian culture as practiced by ordinary people who did not, who did not belong to upper caste and who did not read anything, but who knew how to save water. Mansi put up her hand as well. What were you saying, Mansi, please? Do speak up, Mansi. I saw that you had raised your hand. She's decided to give us a miss. Okay. All right. If you wish to come back, Mansi, aap agar bolna chahe, please come back. Yeah. Okay. So, a beautiful book that you must read if you want to know about how ordinary people saved water in Rajasthan. Written by a wonderful man called Anupam Mishra. And the book he wrote two books. One is called Rajasthan Ki Rajad Boonde, the silver drops of Rajasthan, where every drop of water is treated like a drop of silver. And how Rajasthan, despite being semi-arid and arid in certain parts, has such a huge number of water reservoirs. There are lakes, there are step wells, there are wells. एक तो कुआं होता है और आपने सुना है कुई? Have you heard this word कुई?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Suman Kumari, बताएं.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, in class 11th, I had this story in my book, Rajasthan Ki Rajat Boonde. And there is something called Kui in Rajasthan. The difference between a Kua and Kui is that Kua has a broad opening and Kui has a very restricted boundary as compared to Kua. So that the water does not get evaporated easily and the water is stored for a longer
Well
time.
done. Absolutely. Absolutely. Very accurate description. Do you know how quiz are made, Suman?
Yes, ma'am. The description was also there that the workers, the people who were involved in its making, they used to dig it, and ropes were used. Very long ropes were used, and they were used to, to make the boundary of that kui from the very inner portion, and they used to wear something vessel or something strong utensils on their head so that whatever is shedded, the soil or some rocks, they don't get hurt from it.
Exactly. Well done. That's a very good description. Would you know or would anyone else know where to dig a kui? How would you decide where to dig a kui? Anyone? Do you know, Suman? Was it there?
Ma'am, it depends where the moisture level is more.
How would you know?
Ma'am,
How would you know
it
where
can be determined by the kind of soil present there.
Okay. Sarthak has raised a hand. Would you like to come in, Sarthak?
Ma'am, there is a layer called Paler Pani that determines the place where koi is made.
Okay.
The layer in which water flows.
And how is that layer known?
Ma'am, I don't remember exactly. I just remember the name that is called Paler Pani. And
Right.
according to that, only the place is determined.
There's actually a community that is trained to find water under rocks, and all they have is a stick, and they tap rocks with that stick. With the sound of the rocks, they know where the Palit Pani is. Now, are these geologists? Are they engineers? Or what are they? They don't have any degrees. Now, and how do you know? You know because you learn over time the sound that rocks make when you tap them. Can you imagine the beauty of this knowledge? Now, learning, I'm not saying, therefore, one should not study geology, but go with these people and try to learn, because that may not be, I'm not suggesting that at all. But if you're an engineer by training, if you're a geologist by training, you can complement what you know by listening to such people and the knowledge they have. because they also understand the ecology in a more complex way. A geologist might only study soil and rocks, but these people would also know what kind of trees grow there, what kind of animals would come, how would you actually dig so far deep into such rocky soil, etc., etc. There's so many concomitant knowledges. When we do it in the university, you know what we call it? Interdisciplinary approach. If someone who knows about rocks also knows about trees, also knows about water, also knows about animals, that's interdisciplinarity, right? That so much of the knowledge that people have on the ground is foundationally interdisciplinary. And what is most interesting is that they also keep the knowledge of that nature as something that they have to respect. They never use the word resource. Sansadhan is a coined word that we use in Hindi or in English. Nature is the source. Nature is the source, and we are dependent on that source. When you say nature is a resource, it's like पैसे से हम खरीद सकते हैं कोई भी चीज. बहुत foundational difference. So what I'm saying is, when you are thinking of a policy initiative, remember the very formulation of policy is where the heart of the problem is. The formulation of policy is made always for people and not of people or by people. We don't think that they have anything to contribute. That's a very big mistake. It's important to listen. It's important to engage. And it's important to begin a conversation in which you could put some suggestions, but you could start with questions. आपको क्या लगता है? यहाँ पर किस चीज की जरूरत है? कैसे करना चाहिए? And then put your suggestions and to say, maybe we can do this. And once you begin a conversation, then you're learning from both sides. They are learning from you, you're learning from them. And if you can learn some things from whoever you're working with, there's always a better opportunity, that there's always a better chance that they will listen to what you have to say. If you only go there with an intent to exercise power, that we are here, we have the power to make policy, work it out, implement, now just do as you're told. This is the reason why so much policy does not get implemented. It's not only because of corrupt bureaucrats and politicians. They are there. That's a problem. I'm not saying that's not a problem. But the rest of it is because people for whom this policy is working never feel a part of that process. And they feel talked down to. They feel humiliated. And you can't play with the dignity of a person and then say that we are doing this for your benefit. It doesn't work. I just went to my village on Sunday with the intent that we are going to start do some work there. And I found that next to one of the Bawdis, one of the Johars, there's this new drinking water plant that has come up. And that plant has been inaugurated. There's a plaque, there's a date and everything. But it is nicely locked with a big padlock. And the premises are basically being used to dry the uple. You know what uple are, na? The dung cakes that are made. So the best utilization of those premises are in drying the dung cakes. Then I asked around कि वो इस्तेमाल क्यों नहीं हो रहा है? क्या जरूरत है उस तरह से प्लांट बनाने की? तो हमारे तो सोर्सेज अलग हैं. उससे जब काम चल रहा है तो क्या उसमें बोतल में भर के पानी लाने का कोई मतलब ही नहीं. लो हो गया. People in the village didn't even think it was necessary. Why did we do that? Why did we spend all that money and do it there? It made no sense. And I'm not saying that people always know and always know better. I'm not saying that either. I am saying, though, that people do know, and if we incorporate what they know, then we are more likely to arrive at better policy than if we didn't. Okay, so I work on the politics of knowledge, and I have learned that the knowledge that we use for the so-called development process is a knowledge that is so restricted that it is becoming an enemy unto itself. It is not helping itself, it's not helping people yet completely. There's so many other solutions that can be far more easily, more cheaply, and very rigorously generated, in which people will participate when they are being implemented. And so that would make it a far more democratic process. And as far as I'm concerned, these few things that I've said today at the beginning of your forum, these are just to provoke you, to make you think, to explore. I'm happy that you're in the university space still. I'm there too. And I also, would like to extend an invitation for a continuing dialogue. I don't want to be here to just be at your inaugural program and then that's about it. I'd be very happy to engage if you have questions, if you're doing something. Just have a chat. Sometimes just discussing something brings up new ideas for yourselves. You're most welcome. And thank you very much for making me a part of your effort. I wish you all the best. And I hope that you're able to figure some things out for yourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing such valuable insights. It was a pleasure listening to you. We would definitely engage with you even after this, this event. You definitely do that. Thank you so much. Um, I would request our audience to share their questions with us through the chat box. We'll address all the questions in the end. Thank you so much. As significant representatives of the youth, we invite our second panelist for the day, Ms. Pankhuri Jain. She is currently pursuing postgraduate program in public policy design and management from the Indian School of Public Policy, New Delhi. Her interest and constant efforts, both outside and in the classroom, to understand policy implications are testament to her goal-oriented mindset. She is a promising young woman and has left no stone unturned in the discharge of the duties binding upon her as the president of Political Science Department, KMC. Her recent engagement with the Janagriha under the Counselor Leadership Development Program, CLDP, and the Praja Foundation as an urban governance research intern further exposed her to the understanding of ground realities in policy space. We welcome you. The floor is all yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah, perfect. So, a very good evening, everyone. Firstly, I would like to thank you for such a kind introduction and for inviting me to the inaugural ceremony of the Young Leaders Policy Discourse Forum. It's a great initiative indeed, and today is not just a moment of happiness and nostalgia for me, but an opportunity to share and reflect on my learning so far. Also, I had great time listening experience of Madhulika ma'am. So thank you for sharing all your experiences. And I would first like to begin with sharing my experience of how and why I um, chose to study public policy. So with the desire to learn and expand the frontiers of knowledge in public policy and to contribute to realization of a just, equitable, and sustainable society, I was drawn towards social science from a fairly young age. So diverse issues like health crisis, poor housing, and congested living conditions galvanized a sense of responsibility to make society a better place, and prodding me on to study these subjects with more interest. So this was the spark that ignited my love for political science and public policy in particular. My admiration for public policy came to the fore while I was pursuing majors in political science from Kiroimal College. And studying political science added that much needed tinge of sensitivity to my perspective, something that is quite essential to my understanding of public policy per se. So, moreover, exposure to a plethora of different ideas and perspectives during my time at college and learning subjects like uh, perspectives on public administration. Then we had public policy in India and DPSM. So all these papers helped me in grasping fundamental concepts of the basics of public policy. And all these factors combined with the exemplary faculty which we had allowed me to cultivate fondness for public policy and governance. Also, however, my reasons for pursuing public policy wasn't just limited to my fondness of the subject, but I think knowing how and why of things is crucial aspect of living in democracy. And I strongly feel that there is a stake that each citizen hold in every public policy that is made. And for the sake of that stake, it is very, very important to sort of analyze the policies that are made by a government and evaluate the implication of the same. So, studying public policy enabled me not only to gauge the process of policy making, but also try to understand what public wants, and it would eventually help me to actualize the solutions to invisible problems that lie at the ground level. Also, I am new to this field. I mean, I just started with my course 3 months ago, and I'm still exploring the policy space. But apart from currently pursuing a postgraduate program from the Indian School of Public Policy, I got the opportunity to work as research intern at the Praja Foundation. So it's basically a non-partisan organization that work towards enabling accountable governance. And my key role was to undertake data-driven research and for identifying capacities in urban governance, map inefficiencies, and uh, identify possible solutions or best practices. Besides this, I also interned with Janagrah, wherein under the Counselor Leadership Development Program, where I helped the organization in developing the profile of the counselors. And the main motive behind that was to develop the profile and to provide the face value to our counselors and to highlight the kind of work they have done so far. So, though I come with very few internships in hand, they just help me in building insight towards public policy and help me understanding the ground reality. Now I would want to touch upon that why public policy and what are the careers ahead. So based on my experience so far, I could figure out following career opportunities that we have in the policy space. So I would like to share that with you. So firstly, you can work with the government in and serve do public service and get into policy making, get government roles, and can get into politics as well. Secondly, you can get into policy monitoring and impact evaluation, wherein you can work with organizations like JPAL, Outline India. Then you can get into project implementation part, wherein you can take up fellowships, you can work with United Nations organizations, or you can work with Big Four, KPMG, EY, Deloitte, and so project implementation basically is a phase wherein visions and plans become reality, and it is where plans is put into action and all sort of strategies are being carried out. Then you can also get into private sector wherein you can get into business consulting, policy consulting for large corporations, and you can work with Big Four, as I mentioned before. And you can also get into policy analysis and related things. Then you can work with non-profit in social enterprises, and even in media and communication sector with IPAC, and you can work with MP's office. So that's another opportunity which you can have, or you can get into research in academia side, which is a large theoretical space, and you can work with JPAL or Center for Policy Research, PRS Legislative Research, or you can work with think tanks, say Niti Aayog. So these are the broad outline of the kind of jobs that you can take up after studying public policy. And lastly, I would want to highlight the need to promote youth participation in decision making process. So in my understanding, even if you don't want to get into policy space, you must have sound knowledge of how policies are made and whose interest are you serving and how effective it is in bringing positive change in lives of the people. So India currently is in the inflection point. Since independence, we have put in hard yards. We have established world's largest democracy. Um, we have created global business, and we have established a soft power that make the world look at us with admiration. So, and with 90% of our population below the age of 60 years of age, we are entering into the phase of rapid economic growth. So, if there's one word that truly defines India as of now is the potential that it has. So, but the fact remains that development has not been sustainable and inclusive so far, and several sections of society do not have access to even the basic necessities and basic human rights. Um, Ignoring issues such as these put at risk the potential upside of India's demographic dividend. And in order to build new India, it is very important that it requires passion, long-term commitment, and a sort of pool of policy professionals who are trained into policy making, implementation, and leadership. So, in new and emerging democracies, the inclusion of young people in formal political processes is important from the start. And to make a difference in a longer term, younger people like us must be engaged in formal political processes and must have say in formulating, today's and tomorrow's politics. So yeah, I mean that's about it. Thank you for listening patiently, and would love to take questions now. Also, like you people can reach out to me if you want to know more about policy space. I would love to help to the best of my knowledge. So yeah, happy to connect. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing such valuable insights. We'll definitely connect with you if we want any information regarding policy space. Thank you so much. We now invite our third panelist for the day, Mr. Vardhan Shikhar. He's a dynamic young professional and has a demonstrated history of working in the public policy and development sector. He has formally worked towards sustainable policies in multiple countries and has extensively traveled to defend his research work in various parts of the world. He leads Project UP, a registered social enterprise and one of the youngest equal partners to UNESCO New Delhi. He is also the founding publisher to the International Journal of Policy Sciences and Law, an international journal with more than 100 published manuscripts. He is currently working in the capacity of public policy consultant to Uber India's South Asia team. We welcome you, Vardhan. You can take the discussion forward.
Hi everyone, very good evening. First up, really huge thanks to all of you folks for putting this up. I mean, back in my college days, and Divyanshi, do help me keep a tab on the time. I'm pretty like on the shorter end. So I do remember my time in college. I was, literally yearning to get something of this sort. So, as people before me said that you guys are actually pretty privileged, pretty lucky to get all of this. So kudos to all of you to make this happen. So usually when I speak at the last, I'm like just gonna try and keep you guys up. And so like I was while listening to Pankuri and everyone else, I tried to mold what I had to say to something that would make a little bit keep you guys in it. So do you mind if I share my screen? All right, guys, can you see it? Give me a thumbs up if you can.
Yes, it's visible.
Awesome. So quick introduction about me. I graduated from Kirodimal College, and with the very amazing faculty teaching me, Rupinder ma'am right here, Akanksha ma'am here, Uma ma'am here. It was the first time I heard public policy, the word from Rupinder ma'am's in Rupinder ma'am's class, and from there I made a career out of it. Got a chance to travel like to over 8 different countries while I was in college, doing all of this policy related stuff and all of that. So I would also take this to really have express my debt of gratitude to all the professors here at Kirodimal College. What I do, so by the daytime I'm consulting public policy with Uber. So we take care of their regulatory stuff, basically all the regulations that come from the government's end. We try to push for business friendly regulations, which is a core policy work, which is corporate public policy, which I'll just talk about. Which was this particular thing, corporate public policy, really interests me because it strikes a perfect balance between managing finances and also doing something really impactful. That being said, by the night time, around evening, I start working at my own social enterprise. So we go by the name of Project Up. So by the morning, I'm doing core corporate public policy. By evening, I'm doing more of welfare related policy. So we work for children. We write to various government stakeholders for child rights, for child related advocacy issues. For instance, adoption, for instance, orphanages, all of these policy issues we try to cover. And we've been able to, really consult with, government agencies towards the National Action Plan, as well as to the executive aid of Home Minister. So, and this is tad bit about me, so you can get some sort of background into understanding where I come from and what I'm going to talk about. And this here is one of my favorite things. I absolutely do not remember where I saw this, but I do recall this. Third semester, I went to my parents. I told them, dude, mom, dad, I want to do something in public policy. Now, I don't really know what this means, but it sounds fancy and I like it. I like the vibe of it. And I want to do it through my own organization. And my parents were कि बॉस ये क्या हो गया हमारे बेटे को, मतलब है कि क्या करना क्या चाहता है. पहले लड़ झगड़ की ह्यूमैनिटीज लिया, फिर लड़ झगड़ के पॉलिटिकल साइंस लिया और अब ये करना है. And I come from a very normal middle class Delhi family and not really big businesses running at my home. So they were like, dude, koi naukri kar lo. What is this? So if you're in that situation, and you might as well be, this might just be relatable to you in terms of understanding how important it is for young people to come out there and to, make a claim, so to say, ki, this is what we want and this is how we aim at achieving it. Now coming back to the ambit of our discussion today, and yeah, I'll keep that meme right there for all of you to look at it and laugh. But nonetheless, so we were talking about, what is the right age to get into policy discourse, to talk with government stakeholders and all of that. Check this out. So this is basically a project which was run by one of my colleagues while I was working in Africa. So they basically wanted to replan an entire city, and trust me, city planning, urban development is a huge chunk of public policy. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to replan a part of a city, like a very small part, and they said, "Ki, boss, all of these people who come from Harvard, Stanford, and like big fancy universities, we want to kind of diverge from there, and we want a new perspective." And this is the new perspective that they came up with, which you can see on your screen. It looks very random, right? This does not look like one of those cool city planning charts. Your blueprint hai, aise banaya hai, policy people are coming, then there are architects coming. All of that. It's not like that, right? It's very simple. I would really hate to call it that, but it's actually very childish, right? And in fact, if you think like that, you're not going to be wrong. So what these city planners did, they went to schools around San Francisco and they started asking children to come together and suggest how they would want their city to look like. And why I'm talking about this particular case study is so that you can understand what is the correct age to indulge with the government, and the fact that government is not far away. And the kids that we're talking about here are from age group of between 7 to 13, 14, 15. And this is what they came up with, and this is what it translated into. So this board translated into this model of city planning. And and if you don't really believe that, you can check this out here. This is the same project that was undertaken in Singapore, and this is what kids can do. So if this is what kids can do, I personally do not believe that there is anything called as too young to consult with the government, or something like you're too small, or whatever the wrong terminology is perhaps for that. So if these kids can do it, you, me, everyone can do it, and you do not have to be a public policy pro or like a PhD or like some sort of big fancy title ahead of your name. All you need is the virtue of being a citizen of a country, a concerned citizen of a country. And that's how my journey took me. So I started with being really concerned for children, and that's what my pain point was, which I discovered in college. And we went on working towards it. And the first time I went to a member of parliament's house, I knew this is how the problem will be solved. So this is what I'm trying to really put out there, is to really understand, one, what issue you're really concerned about. एक ऐसी चीज which does not let you sleep, pick that up and start working on it, and you will soon realize that there is a lot that the government can do to help you out around that. Now the place where we lose this is when we think like, okay, the government is pretty far away, which a lot of times is not the case. And why do I say that is, and this is like an open sort of activity I would urge you guys as political science students and students of social sciences to do, is pick an issue that you're really concerned about, write a letter to your local member of parliament, write a letter to your MLA, write a letter to the prime minister's office, and you would not believe, I've written letters to the PMO and I've gotten responses while I was in college. And likewise to multiple ministers. At least try writing a letter, and that's where you will see that youth can actually engage with policy. So Pankhudi before me touched upon a couple of so this what I was talking about, all of this passion driven public policy consulting is one. So policy, there are two people, one who really passion driven, really passion and the development space basically, and this is my personal experience. And the second one is we do core academic policy consulting. So if you're the one who's passion driven, go take this challenge up, go write an issue down, talk to your members of parliament, talk to the concerned stakeholders, and see the kind of difference you can make, and they will respond. You write 10 letters, you'll get one response for sure. We're the largest democracy, and we're the largest for a reason. Now, then talking about the second part, where public policy, the reason, go back to that meme. The meme is basically a cause of concern here, is because usually you see policy people will not be earning great amounts, huge money is not coming in, which is not always the case, but it's very subjective, sort of stereotypical prejudice against policy people. But that's how our generations perceive it. So the second type of people that I've met are the ones who would strike a balance between passion and also parallelly run in terms of their finances. So being a youth, if you see yourself in the first half, which is passion driven, which I was while I was in college, go ahead, take the challenge up. If you see yourself in the second half where you want to really balance your finances out as well, let's talk about a couple of opportunities which Pankudi did talk about. I'll try to streamline it a little bit here. This is statistically out there, more pretty active areas within policy. So one is you can research in the development space. Development space is basically all your NGOs working for welfare. So for prisoners' rights, as random as prisoners' rights to nuclear proliferation, right? These are the kind of NGOs, non-profits, ICANN, all of these NGOs and social enterprises which work for the welfare of people. You can research for them, and through there you can tap into public policy. That's what we do at Project Up. So we're an NGO, right? And we also parallelly consult various government stakeholders. And then there are core research think tanks, and all of these opportunities come up and down. So post your maybe your bachelor's in political science or whatever course you're in, be sure to check this out. Then you have research with core government organizations. So I was researching with the New Delhi Municipal Council when I was in college, and then I was working with the government of New South Wales. And both of these organizations are very well within government. So when you're working within government, you, as Dr. Banerjee very rightly said, that when you're working within the government, you're at a very direct sort of threshold to change and bring about impact. Then there is my favorite, academia. A year back, I was teaching at a university in Niger, which is Western Africa, and I was teaching public policy. Very surprising. I really took cheat notes from Rupinder ma'am's notes there. That's altogether a separate story. But academia is something which you can totally look at in terms of if you're looking at a career within public policy. Directly within government sector is your IAS and your UPSC and the hard stuff that I could never do. And I wish that you're one of those people who are able to crack all of this. But that's also, again, something that you can look at. Then there is CSR activity. So a lot of companies, for instance, I'm working with Uber. So Uber has a CSR, and all the companies that are big enough do have a CSR. So through CSR, you can, again, work with governmental stakeholders to create on-ground impact, which in turn changes policy. And I'm really, really, really sorry, guys, if I'm being too quick with this. I do understand that we're on like a super short time, but I'll just again skim through it. Then there's corporate public policy and management, something that I totally like. Within corporate public policy management, what you have to essentially do is play two games, right? So one is you balancing public policy towards welfare, and then you're also balancing public policy for the betterment of a business. For instance, if the government raises tax for a business and you know that the tax is not good, you will try to create submissions, try to create regulatory drafts against all of the government regulation. You'll meet stakeholders, talk to them, and push government to take back those sort of, and this is a very basic example, just by the way, take back those taxes so that business can flourish. And at the same time, public policy also serves good, right? So that's one way of understanding corporate public policy. And it's a lot of fun for me personally, because I get to also bring in my business sort of acumen there, which really interests me. So, and I do remember, if you're taking policy courses in DU, there are basically courses which talk about management. So there is some NPM and all of that coming in. So whenever I'm doing corporate public policy, it kind of brushes through. So and the beautiful thing about this is, a lot of times people will tell you that social sciences will never come in handy when you want to do some actual job, and this is a stereotype I it comes even now. But when you're doing corporate public policy, you'll get to see a lot of the things that you learned in classroom coming to life. Then you have communications, hard political engagement, and freelance researcher. So again, I wouldn't take much of time to talk about these. But in case you have any questions, you want to understand how to establish yourself as a freelance researcher, or how to become a communications professional, we can always have a chat, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. But this is my favorite slide. For me, public policy is not about money. It's not about impact. For me, public policy is adventure. It's an art. It's an art of how your words can change the life of someone down there. If you look at it from that perspective, things will change. You sit in your public policy class the next time and think of how one word can change the life of someone in a slum, or not rather even high up. That's the power of public policy. So in case you don't like all the conventional career options that we just spoke about, and the conventional ways of how youth can engage in public policy, check these out. For me, it was always about adventure art. So I was doing peace operations in Western Africa, parallelly teaching there. So I loved traveling. I used my research to travel. So for me, that was the case. But nonetheless, so if you want to do adventurous public policy, go for a fellowship. After your college, apply for a fellowship. There are multiple fellowships. So there is SBI Youth for India fellowships. There is your Ashoka fellowship. Then you have Brighton fellowship. Both of these fellowships, they're residential. All of these are residential. So they'll take you out, put you in a random village in India, and they'll ask you to create some sort of mechanism that helps people. What a lovely adventure. What a lovely way to start your career in policy or development. Then there's peace and development work internationally. And this is one of my favorite things. I'm really sorry, Divyanshi, if I'm taking more of time. But I'd love to talk about this. So generally, हमारे सब ऐसे बोलते हैं कि go to London, go to US, go to Europe, and study fancy. If you're a real social science student, and this is again super personal to me, that's how I looked at it. A real social science student would rather seek social problems rather than like a lot of like for me it was like that, right? So I was seeking social problems. I wanted to get out there and work. So look at countries which are poor, look at countries which are struggling with security challenges. Go there, travel there, look for jobs there. Finding jobs there super easy, right? And go work there, and you will see social problems right in front of your eyes that you were taught about in class, and you'll have an opportunity to transform it. Like, dude, so lovely, right? So, and there are things like that, and it's so good. Like, imagine I just did my undergrad and I was teaching in a university, right? So what this means, if I could do it, you can totally do it better than me. So there are these opportunities, and you got to look out for it. Media is the best, honestly. Media influences public policy like nothing. So if you're like an Instagram blogger, like a super cool influencer kind of stuff, use that to influence public policy. Corporates will come to you and pay you to say something, right? So these are the kind of wonderfully different avenues that are out there, which you should totally look at, especially being social science students. It becomes really, really very, very important. Just want to touch upon this quick. So this is my last slide. um Guys, especially for policy people, so when I was out there, I did not know how to code. मुझे coding nahi aata tha, or I was not really good with stats or something. These are the 6 things that got me things that I really want to do. One is power of networking. Social science within corporates with development works on very sort of interlinked connections, networks, and people talk. We have events and all of that. So make friends, make genuine friends in the industry when you get out of college. While you're in college, use LinkedIn for it. And keeping in mind COVID, use LinkedIn, make a nice LinkedIn profile, talk to people who interest you, get them to block your calendar, have a conversation. Second is, and I cannot deny this, importance of reading. I will drop in a couple of resources here which you can go through. And if you're really enthusiastic about public policy, there's Oxford Manual for Public Policy. Check that out. Very basic and also very, very, it gets hard as you read it. Third one is personal branding. Do as much as you can to enhance your profile. Public policy is about going out there and showing yourself to get things done. And this is the most colloquial, most orthodox kind of way I can talk about it, but that's what it is. So focus on your personal branding. Try to think how you can make yourself appeal to people and all of that. Then there's stakeholder management. Again, this is core public policy. So at Project Up, and I'll just quickly advertise, at Project Up we have basically public policy and consulting courses. So there we talk about stakeholder management, but something that is a very core skill to policy people. Always remember the spirit that you're consulting policy for good, and public policy, the very essence of the subject is to somehow get out there and change the life of one person to the best. Again, okay, personal, very personal. No scholar ever said that. Then there is the importance of grassroots knowledge, which is again something I wouldn't talk much about. But if you want to know what grassroots knowledge is, I would talk about this paper. So it's called Elite Imitation in Public Policy by Shruti Rajgopalan et al. So do check that paper out. Wonderfully highlights how grassroots knowledge, a lack of grassroots knowledge, is the reason why policies in India fail. Check that out, and I'd also share some links if you guys allow me to. Once again, thanks a lot, guys, for having me. I had a very, very tough schedule, so excuse me if the presentation was kind of silly. But you can reach out to me on both these email IDs. I'll be more than happy to contact. I feel Kirodimal and these amazing people here have given me so much, and if I can just talk to a bunch of you, it'll be a very small way I could give back. So feel free. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you so much, Vardhan, for such a great presentation. Thank you for joining in. Divyansh, you can take the discussion forward.
Thank you so much, respected panelists, Vardhan, Rupinder ma'am, Madhulika ma'am, and Pankuri Di for enlightening us with such thought-provoking insights. So, without any further ado, we'd like to open the floor for any questions that you may have. Also, Vardhan, let us know if you'll be staying back for the Q&A session or you'll have to leave.
I'll stay, Divyansh.
All right, great. So, whatever questions you all may have, you can put them in the chat box. In case somebody wants to unmute and ask a question, you can do that as well. All right, till the time the participants are taking some time to write down their questions, we have got a couple of questions from the registration form that we circulated. So we'll start with those questions. The first question was, how do ideologies affect policy making? Are young minds more prone to get trapped in identity politics? So I think, Pankuri, if you would like to take that up.
I think Professor Madhulika
Yeah, I was about to say that. Yeah.
It's a tough
I'm sure Pankuri would be able to say something to that. If you'd like to, please go ahead. I mean,
Yeah, ma'am, please, you go first. I'll take then. Yeah.
Um, I remember the second part of the question better, which is that are young people more susceptible to identity politics? Is that the question?
Yeah, it's like how are young people more prone to, get trapped in such identity politics?
That's a very, very, tough question. And it's coming from some kind of, churning inside the person's mind, I think. And a very important question. We have to understand where identity politics comes from. It comes from people feeling that their identities do not have that kind of dignified existence that they deserve. Foundationally, any kind of identity politics comes from that. And if there's a community or a people who believe that their identity does not have that dignity, then it is bound to be that the sensitive people from that community will channelize their energies towards that kind of politics. Sometimes very good work comes out of that. There's no question about it. So, the word Dalit, and you'll all be surprised, when we were growing up, Ambedkar was only the writer of the Constitution. That was it. People hardly, valued the kind of political mind he had and the set of ideas and practices that he brought to politics. And it's really in the 80s, as I was growing up, I was in college in the 80s, and then coming into politics, understanding that Ambedkar became a very important icon because of a certain kind of Dalit consciousness. The use of the word Dalit comes from that time. And so people got into it. That's just by way of an example of something that all of you are very, very familiar with. Now, any sensitive young person, whether they belong to a Dalit community or not, would naturally get drawn into that politics because it's necessary. At the same time, they also get drawn into it because those issues which are of common concern to everybody who is deprived, who does not have privilege, who does not have access to the best outcomes of public policy, those issues which are common are never systematically foregrounded enough that you think it's not just my community that is deprived, but there are many others. In every community, there are privileged and underprivileged. The proportions, of course, change. So in upper caste communities, the number of privileged and privileged people are far higher in proportion, no question. But then, is it just a function of the community? Is it a function of the larger failure of policy? It is in that orientation that one can actually influence the way in which young people opt to work in the social space. Let me take this opportunity to say that I was very excited to hear what both Vardhan and Pankhuri said independently of their own kind of work and what motivates them to do this. Now, clearly, there is an understanding that there is a problem out there, as Vardhan put it, there is a problem out there. And that problem needs solving. I can solve it. And I want to solve it. When you have that orientation, then you can perhaps give primacy to the problem and then make sure that everybody who's affected by that problem can actually benefit from it, irrespective, as we say in our constitution, irrespective of caste, creed, religion, gender, etc. But that's a leap that our education has to enable people to make. Or those who are working in policy, they should be able to draw on people in to say, look, this is something that we will work in a substantive way, while being sensitive to the idea of inclusion. It does not have to be so. All these policies of empowerment of women, for instance, which I find very strange, because it's in a patriarchal society. It's not only women who are disempowered. in many substantive, significant ways, men are disempowered. If they feel that their masculinity lies in violence against women, in a deeply psychological sense, they are disempowered because their humanity is not being foregrounded. So we need to, when we talk about feminist practice and any kind of feminist policy, has to include both men and women. And if we have failed in many ways, it's because it does not include everybody. But this is a very tricky ground. We need to understand that some people are especially underprivileged. Focus on that and yet have an overall sense of how things need to change. That orientation, unfortunately, is really a gamble. A young person may or may not receive it. If they don't receive it, they go the identity politics way. If they receive an orientation, they are much more likely to go into something more, oriented towards a fundamental problem-solving approach. It's a tricky ground.
Also, I just wanted to add one thing to this. So I feel that identity politics in democracy is indication of I would say a more healthy politics because you're just questioning the status quo and you're trying to improve the system. So it should not necessarily be seen as a negative term, is what I think. It's my opinion on this.
Right. Anything, Vardhan, that you would like to add to this?
I think like how dare I with such a Dr. Banerjee giving such an insightful thing out there. I wouldn't.
All right. We'll move on to the next question. Before we take the one in the chat box, I saw a couple
Sorry,
raising.
can I just interrupt you for 1 second? Vardhan, surely you're on the ground and you are doing interesting work. I think the insight that you would bring from your end would be very valuable. So let's not get into this kind of, feeling. And certainly, I hope that I am not the one who's making you feel awkward to express your opinion. That should not be the case.
No, not at all, ma'am. Not at all. It's just every time I get back to college, it's just that regards for my professors come back. Nonetheless, towards the matter of identity politics, it's actually very interesting. So to see that there's one thing that I've observed perhaps multiple times on ground, while on issues such as policies of agriculture, policies of equality, all of these things. So there are like two different aspects of how normal citizenry engages with the government here. A lot of times what I've observed, very personal, is identity politics is driven by a lot of on off sort of off anglicized version, and off the academic version of consulting. So so and that is something, and the place where we're talking about more fundamental problem solving approach is highly elitist in terms of its approach, highly only for the reserved for the privileged people, and it's very anglicized, honestly. um, and that creates a divide, and that divide is something that is very, very problematic. And every time I'm looking at deeply entrenched social issues, this divide is something that is very fundamental. And to me, I would rather not solve identity politics until and unless I've solved this divide. Because the moment there is some sort of inclusion between the two sort of groups, we could very easily tackle these sort of identity politics and related democratic, non-democratic issues.
Right. Thank you for your views, Vedant. I see Vedant Singh raising his hand. Vedant, you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Vedant has put his question on the chat box. Is that the same as you wanted to ask, Vedant? You have a connection error. But he has asked a question, okay, which is, if the policy domain has to choose between generalists and specialists, which one will it generally prefer, or the dichotomy does not matter? See, traditionally, public administration went by this generalist-specialist divide. And in terms of the way bureaucracy is structured, it continues to have a so-called generalist orientation. But you talk to bureaucrats, you meet bureaucrats who work on the ground literally and who do their work seriously. For every single posting that they come up with, that they are sent to, they have to acquaint themselves with the details of the specialty in which they are expected to respond. So all generalists have to work with a certain orientation of specialists. And I think it's really unfair that they are shuttled from one area to another, expected to cope all the time. I think we really underestimate the amount of work they have to do every time they get to a new posting. And sometimes bureaucrats have worked in a way where they ask that we've done a lot of work, we've developed a lot of understanding in this particular area, please can you post us in the same department? And as and when that happens, then you see that the policy domain operates in a very different way. Let me give you an example of a bureaucrat I admire tremendously, and I'm not given to admiring bureaucrats. A very senior lady in her mid-70s now, called Shailaja Chandra. Now, Mrs. Chandra was, in fact, very interesting. As a very young child, I saw her as a young bureaucrat. I was a little girl when I saw her as a young bureaucrat. She was posted in Andaman Nicobar Islands. And then many years later, when I was teaching and doing my research, she was a secretary in the Ministry of Health. But what Shailaja did was to develop a huge understanding on the non-mainstream departments of health. So what are known today as Ayush, and then Ayush became a ministry, that used to be known as Indian Systems of Medicine and Homeopathy. So Mrs. Chandra developed so much understanding of that, and she insisted that she wants to work only in that area. And she made such foundational institutional changes in Ayush. She created the first policy document on ISM and H. Later it was changed to Ayush. And you know what is the Ayush ministry today, which this government takes the credit for, actually was created in 2001. And Mrs. Chandra was one of the people responsible for that. And I was going there as a researcher and talking to all the various people in the department, trying to understand the policy on Ayush. And everyone would tell me that Mrs. Chandra secretary हो सकती हैं, bureaucrat हो सकती हैं, लेकिन वो सबसे बड़ी activist वही है, क्योंकि उनको इस issue पे इतनी समझ है, इतना interest है, इतना उन्होंने invest किया है. So, she actually completely denied the dichotomy by her whole career, by her whole action. And she always played by the rules. She was so good. She understood the system so well. And yet she did tremendous good for the Ayush ministry, and in very, very tough and, rigorous ways. I am really admirable. And then, after that, she became Chief Secretary, Delhi administration. So after her years at Ayush, then she came back to a regular kind of generalist role in Delhi administration, in Delhi government, sorry, under Mrs. Dikshit, when Mrs. Dikshit was the chief minister the first time. So, this kind of dichotomy exists, God knows for whose benefit. We find that when public policy activists work well, it's when they own the speciality of every. You require tremendous technical and rule-based knowledge of that area if you have to make good policy. And as Vardhan said, most of the time people make bad policy because they don't know the ground. Absolutely right insight. And this is why I was also saying, Vardhan, I don't know whether you were there when I was speaking, but I was also saying that, the way to do good policy is to listen to people on the ground and to ask them what they know and what knowledges they have about their areas. So this generalist, specialist and all, ये सब जो पुरानी public administration theory में होता है ना, वो हमको theory से भी निकाल देना चाहिए. And I always argue, when we make curriculum changes and so on, कि अब ये पुरानी चीजों को छोड़िए, निकालिए और जैसा हो रहा है जमीन पे उसके बारे में पढ़ाइए. That makes a lot more sense. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am, for answering that. Another question that we have, Mansi is asking, how can policy formulation be more transparent and inclusive, and how can we as young individuals contribute to it?
I'm sure the two youngsters can respond to this. Pankhuri and Vardhan.
You wanna
Inclusion is a
go,
big
Vardhan?
deal.
Yeah.
Inclusion is a big deal. It's very important.
Super important.
So
Go ahead, Pankuri. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just feel that it is very important for our generation, to get into and as Vardhan, he rightly mentioned in his speech that start writing letters and to the PMOs or to the chief ministers, and just be a little more active when it comes to the policy space and start questioning the system, because only when you start questioning, then only you will be able to reach to a solution, or you will be directed to somewhere. So it's very important to keep questioning and keep thinking, and just and also one I really appreciated this thing that he mentioned in his speech, that uh, just take up one issue that bothers you a lot, and this is something which I also learned, and I also have to choose one domain, where will I will be specializing further. So, and this was told by my professors also, that's very important to take up one particular issue that bothers you the most, and just dig in and understand the kind of problems that are going around, and start working on it, start thinking, just and you will figure out the right way to find a solution for the same. So yeah, that's about it.
So just on that, two things. The first one is if you guys are really public policy, not fanatics, public policy enthusiasts, um, do kind of try breaking down the term. It's public policy, right? Public is people. If you're really into it and you really want to make a career out of it, an extension to Pankuri's advice: talk to as many people as you can, write letters, and be proactive. What you want from government, पहले खुद तो करो एक बार. And this is one of the best lines I heard one of these bureaucrats make, which I've forgotten, is what you expect from the government, try doing it first yourself. Paraphrasing, but meet people, and this is the most important advice. Follow through with people. Now going back to the question of accountability, so back in my college days, I wrote a manuscript, and it was about technocratization of public policy. um, One of the ways, whenever I think about, and this is kind of on the academic bent of it, um, when we talk about transparency and inclusivity in public policy, I, as a scholar, as well as a person down in public policy management, loves technocratization of governance. So the manuscript I wrote, I could share the link with you. There, I basically argue that let's go ahead, let's have artificial intelligence, taking care of our very small regulatory issues, which will bring in transparency. So when we talk about transparency, leveraging technology, especially in a country like India, is sure to go ahead and really contribute to transparency. Second is proper legislations. So we had the RTI, which brought in like some sort of transparency, accountability, right? There are multiple similar legislations. If you look at it from a comparative lens, you'll see that many versions of RTIs exist around the world, better or worse. That's for you to decide. But there's a lot of scope for better legislation to come in order to have more transparency and inclusivity. But then again, the paradox of power comes in, where power holders will not really would want to be transparent. But that's again a separate story altogether. But these two things, leveraging tech and proper legislation, is sure, like the most concrete ways to go ahead and contribute to a transparent government.
if I can come in quickly here, a couple of things that I'd like to add. As you said, Vardhan, if you can do it yourself. So if you're running an organization, if you're running a small group, anything which is trying to take some kind of policy initiatives, it's very important to be transparent yourself. Anybody should know who are making the decisions. If the decisions are being made together, they are being worked out together. Transparency in your own actions is a very important way to actually get into understanding how transparency should be operated by others. But inclusion also involves being very conscious of those who are systematically excluded in all kinds of endeavor.
Very
So
true.
exclusion happens in so many ways. And, because we study in these very privileged institutions, I like to repeat that every time, we behave as if caste does not exist. This is nonsense. All of us are extremely conscious, and those who say that, oh, I don't even know what my caste is. Well, because you come from a privileged caste, you never needed to know what your caste is because nothing was prevented to you because of your caste. That if you come from a caste in which you are, excluded from certain kinds of rituals, certain kinds of social interactions, certain kinds of access, and you don't have to be in a village to do that. Even in cities, where you live, how you live, all of these things are influenced by your caste, both privileged and non-privileged. It's when you do not have privilege that you become very aware of exclusion. So if you are a person who is privileged and has never felt excluded, you have to keep all your five senses open to understand who around you is being excluded, right? Caste is one of those blurry ideas in urban spaces, particularly in amongst privileged middle class. And we really need to have very sharp antennae about it. That's number one. Second, of course, there is exclusion on grounds of gender. There's exclusion on the grounds of community, language. Look at the kind of words we use. We use derogatory terms to describe people from certain communities. You use chinky, use Harry. These are things you never use this kind of terminology. It's like in the US, you would never say nigger to a black person because they have understood that that's very, very derogatory. So inclusion comes from language. It comes from behavior to start with. And then you can make policy inclusive. If we are sensitive to this and make sure you do not use, जब हम गाली देते हैं हिंदी में, हम किसी को चमार नहीं बुला सकते हैं. I'm deliberately using these terms very sharply because these are caste names which have become synonymous with abuse. And I think that we have to be extremely careful. If you want policy to be inclusive, वो तो बहुत दूर की बात है. आप अपने पूरे दायरे में उसको आप inclusive हो सकते हैं. And that is where it starts. So gender, I would, all of us, men and women, fall into patriarchal equations like that. नहीं तू तो इस काम को मत कर, रात हो जाएगी तो फिर घर नहीं जा सकते. अरे, how many of us have fought to be out, to do well, to do stuff which needs to be done for a long time, and then we'll just make sure that spaces are safe. Do something, but do it covertly. Don't make it a big deal. You don't have to be very macho and protect your friends who are women who are going to work late, but you have to be considerate. These are very fine-tuned behavior that you have to understand, which is what will come into being inclusive. So inclusion is a very complex process, and you keep learning all the time. One of the things that I really like about Instagram is all of these issues are discussed threadbare by so many different kinds of people. I would encourage you to look out for them and learn things on that. And then, of course, yours is the generation that is challenging things on sexuality, on sexual identities. These are very, very important questions which your generation is picking up much more bravely than mine did. And on that score, one has to be extremely careful. People like us are very slow at learning these things, but we are trying. But it's very important to learn both the sentiment as well as the expression of it. on this, on these. So inclusion is an extremely complex thing, and if you can start from yourself and the group around you, that's a great start. See, it's going to be very difficult. It's not easy, but that's why it's worth doing. Sorry, I just had to come in there. I wanted to say this very badly. But in the meanwhile, Divyanshi, Sarthak, poor man, has been asking for a long time how ideologies affect policy formulation, and Arman also has raised a hand. So I would suggest, if you don't mind, that Arman also ask their question, and then we can um, try to answer both questions together. Does that work? Also, we should be winding up perhaps now, no?
Yes,
I
yes,
know
ma'am.
it's
Also,
overtaxing.
Sarthak's question was like the very first question that we took, the ideology one. So,
Hmm.
if it's fine, I
We didn't.
think
I don't think we've answered it though. Did we answer it? I can't remember.
yes, yes, we did answer. It was like
We did.
related with identity politics and ideology. So it was like a combined question, the very first
Hmm.
one.
Ah.
So I think we can go ahead with Arman's question. Arman, you can unmute yourself and ask.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Arman, and it is a really lovely time here to attend this beautiful webinar. And I am a KMC fresher, Pol Science Honors. So I was really excited about this forum. What is it about? And I had a great experience till now. So my question is basically, and this question is like many times I have discussed it with my classmates and schoolmates, but we are not able to, come to a conclusion about it. And the question is long-term policy versus democracy, because the fact is that it is true that in democracy, in a true democracy, the policies that are being made, they have a part of people. It has people's role in formulating it. But the problem is that whenever a good like the policy that would work in the favor of a nation, it's formulated and successfully formulated and implemented, but because in democracy the power changes with a regular interval of time, and many times such policies get entangled with party politics. When other party comes to power, they know that that policy may be in the favor of the country, but because it was formulated by another opposition party, they want to remove it, and they want to formulate their own policy to make it sure that it seems that they are doing the main work there. So there are many aspects of democracy that works against many times against long-term policies. If we compare it to authoritative governments, then we can surely say that those policies are not even the choice of people themselves, but there's definitely this negative side of democracy. So how we can protect those long-term policies in a democratic situation? That is my question. Thank you.
Ma'am, Madhulika, ma'am, you can answer the question.
Arman, would you like to give me an example? You have something in mind.
Um, I won't say that I have a very clear example of this, but um, yeah, ma'am, I don't think I have a clear example for it. I had to do my research, but we came up with this discussion when we were in class 10th. Actually, we were discussing about the negative sides of a democracy. Then we were told by our teachers and other professors that there's one negative side of democracy is that it is slow. The decisions that are taken are slow, and there are many times they lose their permanent tag because they are always at regular times exposed to public opinion, to party politics. So that is one of the negative sides of the democracy. So that is how we came up with this question.
So, in a democracy, the people are the problem.
No, no, ma'am.
They are slowing
Actually,
down things.
no, no, no. Actually, I
So,
mean,
if
like
you
in
ask
a
their
country
opinion,
like
it
India.
takes too long to work out a
Hmm.
policy. So, in a democracy, the people are, we are trying to do things for the people, but people slow things down.
Ma'am, I would like actually say that it gets disturbed by the intentional party politics that are not in favor of the people itself, but it is a result of
Well, why is
competition
party
that happens
politics
between the
not
parties.
in favor of the people? Party politics, people,
Sometimes it
parties also are
yeah,
people.
sorry. Yeah.
Political parties are also people. Many people back a political party that comes into power. They wouldn't come into office unless from the people,
Right, ma'am.
right? So,
Right,
how
ma'am.
can we say that political parties slow down the policy process and democracy slows it down?
Yes, ma'am. But we cannot also say that at every juncture, at every point of time, parties really represent what people want out of it. Why people have elected them, they do exactly what they have to do, what should do according to the according what people want. Because if this was really true, then uh, we shouldn't have any problem with politics at all. If the representatives of people were
Absolutely.
doing the right.
Absolutely. True. So then what is the question? This is what we have to ask ourselves. What is it that is troubling us? What is it that is bothering us? See, when we look at policy as something that one political party has formulated, which may be good for the country, but another political party, just out of spite, because they are an opposition, they want to change that, right? One thing that you can see in common is that the policy formulation or the change of the policy, both are happening at the top. Those who come into office first make the policy. When they are thrown out and the other people come into office, they want to change the policy. So policy is being made from the top for the people. Right?
Yes, ma'am.
So it's one part of the democratic process which is causing problems, which is actually pretty undemocratic. If you heard what I was saying, that if policy is always being made by those who are only in office, only in power, as we like to say, which is inaccurate actually. Everybody has power. Power is it's office. Those who have authority of office, they make the policies. And we have interpreted democracy to mean that we transfer all the power of the people to those who are elected. Then they decide what is to be done. So naturally, if one set of people make one decision, the others come in as an opposition, they're going to throw it out. But if we are to think about democracy as operating differently, where people who are not necessarily in office, but those who need to benefit from a certain policy, they have a say in what the policy should be. And those who are in office actually just aggregate all the opinions. So whether we need to grow more food, what do we need to pay for the food, where should the water be coming from, who should get which part of the water, all of these are decided by those who are in office, those who are in power. That is, the political parties who fight elections and come to power. We just shift the power to the people, which is what a democracy is supposed to be. But we have some people who coordinate, because if I am sitting in East Delhi, you are sitting in North Delhi, someone else is in West and the other in South, and groups of us are deciding what is good for my area. We need to coordinate between the 4 areas of Delhi, but most of all, East Delhi needs to coordinate with Western UP, because our water and land and everything is much more shared with them than with the rest of Delhi. So there has to be some coordination with the rest of Delhi, some coordination with the rest of Western UP. If we make this the norm, and we know that we have certain resources which we have to use, we cannot abuse, and we are all responsible for those resources, suddenly we will all start feeling that you cannot chuck things into the Yamuna. You cannot endlessly keep on using chemicals in your soaps and your dishwater cleaners and everything else. You will suddenly become aware that, oh, let me try and look for other ways of doing it so that the water that I have for my use, then that remains clean. I'm very quickly translating from the idea of democracy to people actually owning issues, resources, relationships with each other, which are only coordinated by those in office. They are not controlled by them. This is a very different notion of democracy. And this is a notion of democracy that you cannot expect people who are going to be elected in office to impose, because they will say, अरे यार इतना मुश्किल से मैंने इलेक्शन लड़के मैं जीता, मैं अपना पावर थोड़ी लोगों को दे दूंगा, वो तो मैं अपने पास रखूंगा. This is the reason why you and I are responsible. And we can become responsible for public policy when we begin to own certain things. It won't happen overnight, but little by little, if we begin to own, nobody can stop us. We have to be clever to understand how to do it, play within the rules, but keep on pushing the state that this is our responsibility, this is our interest. Let us do it. Don't decide for us what we need to. And this, Arman, means that you and I will have to talk to if you and I are both residents of East Delhi, we have to talk to people in Sundar Nagari. We have to talk to people in Welcome Colony. We have to talk to people who are much less privileged than us, but who share our resources. And if we want a true democracy, then we have to work out ways in which we share these resources equitably. Then you and I are all our middle class presumptions now about democracy and so on, एकदम question होने लगते हैं. तो ये जो हम कहते हैं ना कि डेमोक्रेटिक प्रिंसिपल्स की वजह से सारा सब स्लो हो जाता है, होता क्या है इसको तो पहले समझें और उसको बहुत you have to face it very, very honestly and in a very tough manner. This is not about abstraction, it's about real people. So which real people are we talking about? You and me and political parties. And tomorrow, if you want to contest elections, which side are you going to be on? How are you going to work with this? Or are you going to listen to your parents who say, "Arey, politics वो गंदी चीज है भाई, अपना IAS लिखो, अपना रॉब करो, पढ़ लिखे, अपना privilege को जमा." So these are clear political questions we have to ask. These are not in abstraction. And every single thing we need to break it down in terms of real time and to see who is involved in what decision and in whose favor and against whom. Once we begin to see that, then these questions are framed differently. So we should not presume that we are asking the right questions even, Arman, and it's not your fault. It's the way we have constructed this entire democratic understanding of democracy. We begin to tap that a little bit and the cracks show up. Yeah?
Right, ma'am. Because ma'am, you are exactly right. Because this is how the way we have been told the things are. That democracy is the reason. No one told us, because after how you answered my question, I realized that my question should be that how we can decrease the distance between the policymakers and the people who are concerned with their problems. Because if we resolve that problem, then we shouldn't have any complaint with governments going with their long policies. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. This was a wonderful session. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for answering, and thank you, Arman, for that question. So, considering the time constraints and for the convenience of our speakers, we'll not be taking any more questions. However, you can feel free to drop in any questions that you may have via the email address that we'll just drop in the chat box. That was indeed an invigorating question answer session. I would now like to take this moment to thank our principal, ma'am, Professor Madhulika, and our alumni speakers for enlightening us with their words of wisdom. I'd also like to express my gratitude to Dr. Rupinder Ugroy for her support and guidance in organizing this event, and our department professors for joining us today. Team YLPDF is deeply grateful to you all for gracing us with your presence today. Your willingness to share your time and expertise was critical to the success of this event. Last but not the least, I'd like to thank YLPDF team members and the audience for helping us to make this event a great success. Lastly, we would love to hear the feedback for this session. We urge everyone to kindly fill in the feedback form. The link for the same can be accessed in the chat box. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.